What if everything we thought the season 4 finale was trying to tell us was actually a distraction? Because after watching the ending several times, one detail keeps standing out, and almost nobody is talking about it. Everyone is focused on the deaths, the monsters, and the shocking final moments. But hidden underneath all of that chaos is a pattern that completely changes how we should look at the entire series. The ending doesn't just set up season 5. It quietly explains why the people in this town keep failing, why the same tragedy keeps repeating, and why the man in yellow may have never truly been trying to stop them at all. If that's true, then the biggest victory in the finale might actually be his. And once you connect all the clues from earlier seasons with what happened in this finale, the ending starts to make a lot more sense, while becoming even more terrifying. Let's break it all down. The biggest question after the season 4 ending is surprisingly not who survived or who died. The real question is much simpler. What actually changed? At first glance, it feels like everything changed. The town has been thrown into complete chaos. Important characters are gone. The monsters seem more dangerous than ever. The talismans are no longer protecting everyone like before, and the balance of power has shifted dramatically. But if we step back for a moment, something strange becomes clear. Despite everything that happened, the town is still doing exactly what it has always done. It creates hope, lets the survivors believe they are finally making progress, and then destroys that hope at the very last moment. That pattern has existed since season 1. Every time someone discovers an important clue, something terrible immediately follows. Boyd finds the talismans, but the nightmare only grows larger. Tabitha reaches the lighthouse, yet escaping doesn't actually solve the mystery. Jade continues uncovering hidden pieces of the town's past, but every answer creates 2 new questions. Season 4 follows that exact same formula. The difference is that now the show wants us to notice the pattern itself. The entire season builds toward one central objective. Recovering the children's remains seems like the answer everyone has been searching for. Every vision, every clue, and every sacrifice appears to point toward this single mission. Naturally, the audience expects this ritual to finally break the curse. Instead, the exact opposite happens. That immediately raises an uncomfortable possibility. What if the ritual was never supposed to end the cycle? Think about it carefully. If the man in yellow truly understands every cycle better than anyone else, why would he allow Jade and Tabitha to get so close? Throughout the series, he has shown that he can manipulate people with frightening precision. He knows their fears. He knows their weaknesses. Sometimes he even seems to know what they will do before they decide themselves. A character with that level of knowledge shouldn't accidentally let the heroes reach the most important object in the entire story, unless he wanted them to. This completely changes how we interpret the finale. Instead of trying to stop the ritual, maybe he needed the ritual to happen. After all, many ancient stories share one common idea. A ritual performed incorrectly can be far more dangerous than never performing it at all. Season 4 quietly hints at this idea more than once. Characters repeatedly talk about how rituals depend on following specific rules. They aren't simply symbolic acts. Every step matters. Missing one piece can completely change the outcome. Now look at what actually happened. The bones were recovered, but nothing suggests the ritual reached its true conclusion. There was no obvious release, no peaceful ending, no sign that the sacrificed children were finally free. Instead, the town immediately became even more unstable, almost as if something had been awakened rather than defeated. That reaction feels intentional. It's possible the bones themselves were never the final objective. They were simply one piece of a much larger process. And if that's true, then the real destination may still be waiting somewhere else. This brings us back to one of the oldest mysteries in the entire show, the Lake of Tears. Ever since Ethan first mentioned it, the series has treated it differently from every other location. Unlike the lighthouse, the caves, or the colony house, the Lake of Tears has never been fully shown. It exists almost entirely through stories. That alone makes it incredibly important. From constantly teaches us that stories shape reality. Children's books predict future events. Drawings preserve forgotten history. Nursery rhymes hide warnings. Even Victor survives largely because he remembers stories everyone else forgot. So when Ethan repeatedly talks about the Lake of Tears having the power to heal, it becomes difficult to dismiss it as simple imagination. Maybe healing doesn't mean saving injured people. Maybe healing means restoring something that was broken centuries ago. If the sacrificed children were separated from whatever made them whole, then perhaps their remains alone are meaningless. Perhaps they need to return to the one place capable of completing that process. That could explain why retrieving the bones only made everything worse. Instead of finishing the ritual, the survivors may have interrupted it halfway. Imagine unlocking a door without ever opening it. The lock is broken, but nothing has actually been resolved. That incomplete action may have weakened whatever fragile balance was keeping the town stable. And balance is something this series constantly returns to. Good is followed by evil. Hope is followed by despair. Every apparent victory comes with an equal cost. The finale doesn't simply continue this theme. It amplifies it, which raises one terrifying possibility. The survivors may believe they are getting closer to escaping, but from the town's perspective, they may have only advanced to the next stage of the same endless game. If there is one idea that keeps appearing throughout it is that this town doesn't simply trap people, it teaches them. Every survivor believes they are making their own decisions, but by the end of Season 4, it feels like the town has been quietly guiding every single one of them exactly where it wanted. Think about how many times someone discovers an important clue only after suffering a devastating loss. Boyd doesn't become the leader because he wanted power. He becomes the leader because tragedy forces him into that position. Jade only begins seeing visions after becoming obsessed with solving the mystery. Tabitha keeps receiving visions because she refuses to stop searching. Even Victor survived because decades of trauma forced him to remember details everyone else ignored. Notice the pattern. Knowledge in this town never comes for free. Every answer demands a sacrifice. And by the Season 4 finale, that price has become higher than ever. Now, let's talk about the man in yellow. Most viewers naturally see him as the main villain, but I think the finale quietly suggests something much more interesting. What if he isn't trying to kill everyone? At least not immediately. If his goal were simply wiping out the town, he has had countless opportunities over multiple seasons. Instead, he consistently manipulates people into making choices themselves. That difference matters. Real power isn't forcing someone to act. Real power is making them believe the decision was their own. That's exactly what keeps happening. People are shown visions. They hear voices. They experience dreams. Someone offers hope. Then they choose a path. Later they discover that choice helped the enemy. That happens again and again throughout the series. The finale feels like the clearest example yet. Jade and Tabitha honestly believe they are saving the children. From their perspective, everything they do is heroic. But what if every step they take has already been anticipated? Imagine playing a game of chess against someone who already knows every move you're going to make. You aren't really making choices anymore. You're following a script. That idea becomes even more unsettling when we think about the repeating cycles. Season 4 strongly reinforces that history doesn't simply repeat. It repeats with small differences. Every cycle contains familiar roles. A protector, a seeker, a child, a guide, a manipulator. The faces change. The roles remain. That's why characters often seem strangely connected to people they've never met. It almost feels as though they're inheriting unfinished stories from previous generations. Instead of creating new destinies, they're stepping into old ones. But then the finale gives us one tiny reason to believe this cycle might actually be different. The boy in white's confidence. His conversation near the end isn't the way someone speaks when everything has gone according to plan. Instead, he sounds like someone placing hope in a possibility that has never existed before. That raises an important question. What exactly is different this time? Many people assume it's the bones. Others think it's the arrival of certain characters. Personally, I think the answer is much simpler. Memory. Not physical memory. Story memory. Season after season, the town has been trying to erase the truth. Victor forgets. People die before revealing what they know. Important objects disappear. Drawings become damaged. Entire events become distorted over time. It's almost as if the town feeds on forgotten history. But something unusual has started happening. Instead of forgetting, more people are beginning to connect the pieces. Boyd remembers. Jade records everything. Tabitha refuses to ignore her visions. Julie starts experiencing events that shouldn't even be possible. Each season, more survivors understand that the clues aren't random. They're connected. And once enough people recognize the pattern, repeating the same cycle becomes much harder. That may explain why the man in yellow becomes increasingly desperate. Not because the survivors are stronger, because they're finally becoming harder to manipulate. Then there's the mystery of story walking. The show still hasn't explained its full rules, but the finale gives us enough clues to make one fascinating theory. What if story walking isn't actually time travel? At first, it certainly looks that way. Julie appears connected to different moments. Events seem to overlap. Characters experience impossible encounters. But notice something important. The story itself never truly changes. Small interactions happen. Hints appear. Objects move. But the major events still occur. That suggests story walking operates under a completely different set of rules. Maybe it isn't about changing history. Maybe it's about understanding it. Imagine reading the same book multiple times. You can't change the ending. But every time you read it, you notice details you completely missed before. Perhaps that's exactly how story walking works. Instead of rewriting the past, it allows someone to witness hidden moments that reveal the truth behind everything. If that's correct, Julie's role in Season 5 becomes incredibly important. Not because she'll save everyone with time travel, but because she may become the first character capable of seeing the complete story instead of only one chapter. And that brings us to another mystery the finale quietly leaves behind. The strange objects that seem to appear without explanation. Items moving on their own. Sounds coming from empty rooms. Objects appearing where they shouldn't. Most viewers immediately blame ghosts. Others assume story walkers caused them. But what if both explanations are incomplete? What if those moments are actually evidence that different versions of the same story are beginning to overlap? If the barriers between cycles are becoming weaker, then pieces of one timeline could briefly leak into another. That would explain why certain clues seem impossible. They aren't coming from spirits. They're echoes. Fragments left behind by previous attempts to break the cycle. And if that's true, Season 4's ending may not simply be preparing us for another battle against the monsters. It may be preparing us for something far more dangerous. The moment when every version of this story finally begins colliding into one. Now let's talk about the moment that may end up defining the entire series. Not the deaths. Not the monsters. Not even the final cliffhanger. I'm talking about the feeling the finale leaves us with. For the first time since From began, it feels like the town itself is changing. That might sound strange because the buildings are still there, the forest is still surrounding everyone, and the monsters are still hunting at night. But something beneath the surface feels different. Almost every season has followed the same emotional rhythm. The characters arrive. They panic. They discover a clue. Hope begins to grow. Then everything falls apart. Season 4 follows that formula too, but the ending adds something new. Uncertainty. Before, the survivors understood at least some of the rules. Stay inside at night. Use the talismans. Don't let the monsters trick you. Avoid taking unnecessary risks. Those rules made the town terrifying, but predictable. The finale quietly destroys that sense of predictability. Suddenly, the rules don't seem permanent anymore. The environment changes. Safe places no longer feel safe. The balance that held the town together appears to be breaking apart. That is much scarier than introducing a stronger monster. When the rules disappear, nobody knows how to survive. And that may be exactly what the man in yellow wanted all along. Think about it. Fear is powerful. Confusion is even more powerful. People can prepare for danger they understand. They cannot prepare for danger that constantly changes. That's why the finale spends so much time showing confusion instead of providing answers. Every character ends the season with more uncertainty than they started with. Boyd has to lead people without knowing what still works. Jade has more evidence than ever, but no complete explanation. Tabitha finally reached one of the biggest discoveries in the series, yet she still doesn't know what to do next. Even Victor, the person who understands this place better than anyone else, no longer feels like he has all the answers. That tells us something important. Knowledge alone isn't enough anymore. The characters now need understanding. Those are two very different things. Knowing where the bottle tree is doesn't explain why it exists. Finding the children's remains doesn't automatically free them. Seeing visions doesn't reveal who is sending them. Every mystery in From has two layers. First comes the clue. Then comes the meaning behind the clue. Season 4 gives us plenty of clues. Season 5 will likely focus on their meaning. Another detail that deserves attention is how often the finale returns to the idea of choice. Nearly every major character is forced to make an impossible decision. Protect one person or risk everyone else. Trust the visions or ignore them. Keep searching for answers or accept survival. These aren't random character moments. They're tests. The town has always behaved less like a prison and more like an experiment. It watches. It reacts. It rewards certain actions while punishing others. Sometimes helping someone creates disaster. Sometimes making the selfish decision unexpectedly saves lives. It's almost impossible to predict. That unpredictability forces every survivor to question their own instincts. And maybe that's the real purpose of this place. Not simply trapping people, but discovering what they become when every moral certainty is stripped away. Then there's one final theory that I can't stop thinking about. What if escaping was never the objective? Since season 1, both the characters and the audience have assumed the story ends when someone finally gets home. But the finale makes that goal feel smaller than ever. Every clue now points towards something much bigger than escape. The sacrificed children, the repeating cycles, the mysterious symbols, the visions, the boy in white, the man in yellow. None of these mysteries disappear if one person escapes. They continue. That suggests the true objective isn't leaving the town. It's ending whatever created it in the first place. Those are completely different goals. One saves a handful of survivors. The other saves everyone who has ever been trapped inside the cycle. And if the series is really building toward that ending, then Season 5 has an enormous challenge ahead. It doesn't just need to explain the monsters. It needs to explain why they exist. It doesn't just need to reveal the truth about the town. It needs to explain who built the system and why the cycle continues generation after generation. The good news is that Season 4 finally feels like the story is asking those questions directly. For years, the mystery kept expanding. Now, for the first time, it feels like all those separate threads are beginning to connect. The children's story, Victor's memories, Julie's story walking, Jade's visions, Tabitha's journey, Boyd's leadership, the boy in white, the man in yellow. Instead of existing as isolated mysteries, they now look like pieces of one much larger puzzle. Whether that puzzle ends with hope or tragedy is impossible to say. After all, From has never been a story that gives easy victories. Every breakthrough comes with a painful cost. Every answer creates a new mystery. And every time the characters believe they're finally one step ahead, the town reminds them that they may still be playing by rules they don't fully understand. That's why the Season 4 ending is so fascinating. It isn't frightening because of who died. It's frightening because it changes how we see everything that came before it. And if these theories are even partially correct, then Season 5 won't just be the final chapter of the story. It will reveal whether the cycle can actually be broken, or whether every generation has simply been telling the same story over and over again, while believing they were the first to change it. So what do you think? Did the survivors finally move closer to ending the cycle, or did the Season 4 finale play right into the Man in Yellow's plan? Let me know your own theories in the comments. Some of the best ideas about From come from fans connecting clues that everyone else missed. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like the video and subscribe, because we'll be covering every new mystery, hidden clue, and Season 5 theory as soon as they arrive. Until next time, keep questioning everything, because in From, the smallest detail often turns out to be the biggest clue.